Good afternoon. My name is Jason Anderson. I'd like to discuss the impact of Jonathan Edwards on colonial America. New England was a beehive of religious activity in the colonial period, and few ministers or preachers of the day had as great an impact on the growth and development of American Christianity as Jonathan Edwards. In 1727, Jonathan Edwards became the minister in the church in Northampton. Through his evangelical pulpit preaching, the first great awakening began to take root, and in the 1730s, especially in Massachusetts and Connecticut, along the Connecticut River Valley, which transformed American Protestantism for generations to come. Edwards developed a sense of new spiritual revival, a new evangelization, which created quite the religious stir in New England Protestant churches. To Edwards, there was a great need to rekindle the faith, and the best way to do this was through religious revivals, preaching from the heart and awakening the soul. A friend of George Whitefield, colonial America's best-known traveling evangelist, Edwards applied a similar approach from the pulpit, but not in the field. Historian Thomas Kidd commented upon the effectiveness of Edwards' preaching when he noted that words of the revival spread, and as it spread, so did Edwards' popularity. And, quote, in December of 1734, the excitement broke loose with numbers of conversions that Edward found surprising, end quote. The revivalist movement spread like wildfire, especially among the youth. Despite the growing number of believers, the revivals had their opponents, such as preachers like Daniel Wadsworth and Ebenezer Gay, who both were considered old lights. They found the new wave of conversion disturbing. These new lights were disrupting services with their loud, audible lamentations. And historian Daniel Winizarski goes into great detail relating many various late-night conversion experiences that were connected to the revivals and the preaching of Jonathan Edwards. In his essay, Jonathan Edwards' Enthusiast, Radical Revivalism and the Great Awakening in the Connecticut Valley, Winizarski poses this question: was Jonathan Edwards an enthusiast, a member of that notoriously spirit-drenched tribe of hyperzealous New Lights whose Pentecostal fascination with extraordinary gifts of the Holy Spirit scandalized the Great Awakening in New England? The focus of his work is the Savage manuscript, transcriptions of two letters written by Samuel Philip Savage, who accompanied Jonathan Edwards as he delivered his famous Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God sermon in 1741. In 1741, Edwards preached this most important sermon. Delivered in Enfield, Connecticut, this was by far Edwards' high water mark in his ministerial career. Religious conflict arose later in the 1740s, which divided congregations throughout New England. This division between the New Lights and the Old Lights, especially over the requirements necessary for full participation in the body of the church, rocked the establishment. Many Old Light ministers were left to sort out and clean up after the traveling preachers who promoted the evangelical rebirth and full communion ideology. The phrase, "what goes around comes around," is perfectly fitted with Edwards. The revival spirit also led to violence as depression swept over some and suicides were reported. The revival spirit had morphed into something uncontrollable. The great challenge arose in Suffield and spread to Edwards' own congregation. As Winizarski stated, quote, the force of enthusiasm that Edwards had helped to set in motion during his July 1741 visit to Suffield and Enfield would return to his own parish with a vengeance 6 months later, end quote. The New Light movement, which was born out of evangelical, enthusiastic preaching, grew more radicalized, and Edwards was forced to distance himself from the movement and condemn it as it divided congregation after congregation, especially his own. This movement would end up removing Edwards from his very own pulpit.